Every trip down there is an adventure in and of itself. We practice a lot, so the game changes when you're in the red zone. It's not a good thing to be in the red zone on defense, but it is a defensive advantage with that in line being right there. So the game changes. The way the game is played, particularly in the passing game. So we try and get our players used to doing that.
How big do you think it was you got those stops in the red zone Sunday, forced them to kick field goals?
Yeah, it was huge. Just add a couple, 4 more points to when it was 26-7, and probably a different outcome.
What were the issues on the run defense in the first half?
Yeah, it was, as usual, conglomeration of things. One, could have been in better calls. 2, we could have played what we were in better. They do a good job blocking. Got to give them credit. Their backs ran good. So it was a little bit of everything.
More impact than Jordan Davis had on the defense when he's playing at this level.
How much more? He's doing pretty good right now. Hopefully he'll sustain that and get better. Guys get better the more they play, and he's still a young player.
Dick, how do you feel Quinion did shadowing Devontae and handling that responsibility?
I think he did fine. Obviously, he's a hard guy to cover. They had 2 really good receivers. So I think he did fine. When you're matching guys, it's not as easy as you think it is. There's the gymnastics of getting lined up, playing the call. Where did you end up on the previous play? How far away from the action were you? And you got to get back, get the call. It's everybody thinks it's easy, but it's not. And I think he's done a good job with it.
Aside from just him, how is the defense handling that? Because it's not just him that has to move around.
Yeah, it's the other corner. Yeah, the other corner has the same exact problem. And they've been doing fine with it.
Defensive tackle seems to be one of those positions where it takes time to the potential is fully realized for an NFL player. Do you have a thought on that position specifically, why it takes, it could take a few years?
Yeah, I don't know that it's you can make a blanket general statement like that. To me, it's more the individual than the position. But it's different. I think one of the biggest differences between college and pro football is this is a man's game. The run game is more downhill than it is in college football. Generally speaking, some of the offensive linemen are veterans. Most teams have a lot of veteran O-linemen. They know how to play. They're older. And it's vastly different from college football.
Going back to Q a little bit, traveling, is that sort of an X and Z thing? If do the receivers have to stay outside, or are you comfortable if they move inside as well in the slot? So if the receiver, or
outside,
just outside,
yeah.
Okay.
For some of these depth corners, whether it's
What's that?
For some of the depth corners, whether it's Keely Ringo, Mac McWilliams, are they able to make strides when they're on scout team or?
Yes, they are.
And have you seen anything from them in the past few weeks that would demonstrate improvement from training camp?
Yeah, I've told Keely here recently, not in the last few days, but since the end of camp, he's going to get his opportunity at some point, and he got to be ready.
How did you feel Jacory played that when he came in? He obviously went after him quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know how many snaps did he have. I know you know.
12. I think it was 11 or 12.
11 or 12.
12.
Yeah, he got some action, obviously. Thought he had some good plays. One time we were rolled up to him, and I think it was the first play of the 2-minute drive, and had a nice play, broke up the pass down the sideline. So I think he did fine.
Getting back to what you just said about Keely, how was he handled? Obviously, he was disappointed at the end of camp. He didn't win that job. How was he handled, and what gives you the confidence that, at some point he'll be out there?
I think he's handled it very well. Hadn't affected his role as a special teamer, which he's one of the top ones in the league. And I think he knows that eventually he'll get a shot for some reason whatsoever. And he'll be ready.
Have you historically had safety rotations, and if not, why do you feel it necessary to do it this year?
No, historically, no. We started that way in the first game just because Makuba, you know, was coming off injury. You know, Sydney was having a good camp, so we just wanted to split it that way. And we've kind of kept it that way, but doesn't mean that's the way it will be all the time.
In an ideal world, would you rather have just two static players back there?
I mean, that's usually the way it works out. I don't know that ideal is the right way to frame that, but that's usually the way it works out.
For Jalen Carter playing 91% of the defensive snaps, 9 special team snaps, are you seeing strides how you want as far as the conditioning?
Yeah, he's obviously the more he plays, the better conditioning he'll get into. So yes.
What are the Bucs offense? What do they do well, and why did you struggle against them last year?
Well, they're very balanced. They run it good. They throw it good. They got really good receivers. The quarterback is playing really good. He's a scrambler. He scrambled, I think, 11 times this year for close to 120 yards already. You know, so that's always an issue. I've always liked Mayfield. I think he's a good quarterback. Why these teams that had him didn't keep him, I don't know. But GMs make mistakes, you know, just like coaches do. I've always liked Mayfield, and their backs run hard and good, you know, so they got balance.
And the second part of that was, why did you struggle against them last year?
We just didn't play good, and they did, and they took it to us.
They made you tackle. And I think tackling was an issue from what I recall.
In that game?
Yeah, early on. How do you feel like it's been so far this season to tackle?
It hadn't been terrible. You know, I thought we were very good in the second game. Can't remember the first game now. I move on.
Yeah, I get it.
We heard your opinion on heat in the summertime during training camp. Obviously, it's going to be hot down in Tampa. You guys are leaving early to adjust for it. How might the heat impact your rotations, and how do you go about planning for that earlier in the week?
Well, it's too late to do anything right now for it. As far as prepping for it, you don't practice in the heat one day and say you're acclimated, or take a pill and say you're acclimated. The key will be, I mean, it's a mindset, number one. Number two, you know, we need to not let them have 8, 10, 12 play drives on us.
Do you think going early is going to benefit you guys in any way?
I don't know.
What factored into going lighter on edge rushers with the inactives especially?
We had 4, right?
You had Patrick Johnson was down. He had been up the previous 2 games, and then the 2 veteran guys were down as well.
Yeah, to me, that's one that's always going to be fluid, either having 4 or 5. If we go down to 3, then you got a valid question.
Fair enough.
Although we played an entire season once when I was in San Francisco with just 3 active.
What do you think of the pass rush as a whole? Because Stafford's going to get the ball out on time, so often it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, I didn't think the lack of pass rush was an issue in the game. You know, like you said, he gets it out fairly quick. We had some good heat at times. We could have run a stunt or 2 better than we did. But yeah, we didn't have any. Well, we had 1, but I don't think that's reflective of the pass rush overall.
All right. Thanks, sir.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Morning, everyone.
What does it say about Jalen and Jordan that they're like two of the best interior linemen in the league, and they have such a passion for playing on special teams and field goal block?
Yeah, I think it's just a credit to them and who they are as people, who they are as team players. You know, they study. You know, Jalen Carter studies field goal protection very well. He understands it. Same with JD. You know, we have our meetings on Fridays, talk about who we want to attack on their field goal team, and everybody's interested in it. And you know, who really gets a lot of this credit is Joe P. and Clint. On Wednesday, they like to give them a little 5-minute spiel on field goal block before I get to them on Friday. Then it's just another person who helped out a lot. You know, we watch a lot of the film, but Terrence Braxton in scouting, he does the advance, and he said, hey, this side of their line gave up a little leakage right there, so able to just confirm what our eyes are seeing. You know, you watch so much film, sometimes the film lies to you, but have somebody else fresh eyes helps us out. And, you know, again, kudos to those guys. And, you know, JB, Jacorian, did a heck of a job of actually going and hitting the punter from him getting it. And from all else, 61 yards later, you know, JD's in there having a grand old time.
Already made it difficult on you guys on the kickoffs. What's the adjustment going forward with that?
Yeah, you know, kudos to Cardi. You know, we had a sense, obviously, in the first two games watching him against Tennessee and Houston, that he had that knuckleball, you know, and we were trying to replicate it as much as we possibly could throughout the week. And again, you know, kudos to him because he's got that thing figured out. You know, yesterday, Braden and Jake, all of us, we were just watching film and we had a zoomed in look at what he was doing. And it's one of those things like, how do you replicate that? Because just like anything else in the NFL, until you prove you can stop it, you're going to see it again. So from a coaching standpoint, you know, you always look, you know, after the fact is 2020. How do I keep getting these guys better in terms of dealing with those type of knuckleballs? And again, it's just one of those things where you think you can prepare them for as much as they possibly can. Then when it comes into real life, you're still in awe of it. Like that ball moved 4 times before it hit the ground. But for us, you know, after, okay, the ball hits the ground, let's get north and south. Let's put the pressure on them. Can they tackle? Can we run forward? Can we break a tackle and get, you know, some positive yards instead of running east and west? So just some growth from there for both myself as a coach. How do I prepare these guys even better from fielding those type of balls to Tank and John and any other returner? Okay, let's mitigate the problem. Let's get north and south and see what we get going right there.
Are there tickets you can do that?
You know, to that level, I haven't seen. Now, are people going to look at the film and try and replicate that? Yes. But again, everything's a case-by-case study on who your kicker is, you know, what type of plant foot he has, what type of kick he does have. So again, like I said, you know, until we prove we could stop or we can handle a knuckleball, I anticipate that coming forward. But again, everything's a case-by-case study on who that kicker is going into that week.
What's the difficulty is replicating that in practice? How do you practice it?
I think you just try to give them as many knuckleball, dirty balls you can that you can replicate maybe off a jug through Jake, maybe Braden, things of that nature. But I think the repetition of when a ball hits the ground, getting my body square, fielding it like a shortstop. You know, when it gets to the side, that's when you start to fumble up the ball, and that's where all the timing is all off. But if you can at least catch it on the first hop and get it cleanly like a shortstop, you could get up on the field right there and get to north and south as much as you possibly can. So just the fundamentals of staying square. And, you know, a lot of times when the ball is on the ground, you get, you know, overamped or overexcited, and, you know, you start looking at the coverage and you don't look at the ball. Field it first, then make your move once you get in north and south.
Michael, what can Xavier Gibson add to the return game?
Yeah, and again, I think Howie does a great job of always scouring, you know, players that, you know, either get cut or are on the street of that nature. You know, Xavier coming out of Stephen F. Austin, we really liked in terms of his explosiveness in both kickoff return and punt return, and he has breakaway speed right there, and he showed that, you know, early on in his rookie year. Obviously, he had that walk-off against Buffalo. I believe it was that Monday night game. So he has that added ability to stretch the coverage unit. And he had a big return against Pittsburgh to start the season. You know, and for myself, you know, every guy has a clean slate. We all know there's some deficiencies, not the deficiencies, but for myself as a clean slate, to get him acclimated how we do things around here, you know, with the fundamentals of ball carry, security, things of that nature, that's where I get to come in and try to help him out in that case. But, I've always admired Xavier in his first 2 years in the NFL. Then his tape at SFA to his explosiveness is really good.
On the Jalen Carter block, I mean, both of the blocks, he had a really good jump at the snap, but the one that he blocked in particular. Is that something, obviously they had kicked, I think it was 6 either PATs or field goals before that blocked kick. Is that something, did he pick up on something, over the course of those half dozen first kicks that he saw and allowed him to get that big jump? And if you could share what that was.
Yeah, kind of what I allude to, like JC is such a cerebral player when it comes to field goal block. Like he does things that some people don't have a knack for, but he does in terms of figuring things out, whether it's the film that we watch on Friday or during the game. And I think he caught something. I don't want to spill any of his secrets out there in the world, but I think he caught something where he could get that jump. Then his technique with JD to get, we call it a V technique, to try and uproot those guards right there was outstanding. And we always say, you can get 3 yards of penetration, get your hands up. That ball trajectory probably hasn't hit its apex. You could possibly get a block. And one of the field goal blocks, I think it was right before the half, we kind of had him loop around, and he was still able to get some penetration in his hand up. And I think when he feels the wind kind of go past his hand, it kind of what was the word I'm trying to? It confirms what he sees out there, and he knows, all right, I could go and get one. It happened similarly, I believe, 2 years ago against Buffalo. He almost got one, then he got the one where he jumped and was able to get it. So I think, JC is such a smart player that he's able to use that as an advantage.
Is that significant? You're talking about he's like getting into him with his shoulder and kind of lifting him up and then throws his left hand up. That's
what we call the V technique. When you look at those two guys with the two shoulders, it almost creates a V from the point of view that we're looking at it. V technique, run your feet, then get your hands up. Being able to uproot a guy like that, then get to the trajectory of the ball before it gets its apex.
As a follow-up to that, what makes someone good in field goal block? Is it height? Is it timing? Is it wingspan? What's the key that you look for those players?
Yeah, obviously, if you have height, weight, speed, it's going to give you an advantage. I know Calais Campbell, I think he's on his 18th year right now. He's had a plethora of kicks. Shelby Harris as well, Danico Autry, sometimes just have a knack for it. Before my time here at DB, Derek Barnett did a great job in the swim. Guys just have a knack for it, and I think JC and JD have a knack for it in terms of that. But, when stuff is on film, other teams are going to try and prepare you to get you off your game. So that's my job to let them know, hey, they may try to go on a double call, a double set right here. They may try to take your legs out before in terms of the guard kind of just burying his head in the sand right there. So that's where we try to find, counters to all that. But I think it does come with a knack on how you can get field goal blocks.
How much carryover is there from playing D-line versus playing on field goal block?
Yeah, I think the great thing about field goal block, it's not a moving target. In D-line, they run outside zone, inside zone, a trap scheme. You got to use your hands a little bit more. You know where the guy is going to be on field goal, on their field goal team. So being able to have that get off and that get ready, knowing it's a stationary target, I think helps out a lot in terms of the field goal block. But again, you get guys, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, working in tandem like that, it's going to be tough to stop with that middle penetration, especially, as the weather starts to get a little bit colder, the ball trajectory gets a little bit shorter. Lower. It's an advantage we have, but again, it's just for these guys to keep it up in terms of, Wednesday, Thursday, you see us on field goal block. They're still working their technique right there. Maybe 1-2 steps, but they're still working their technique and their get off.
Said that some guys will just go in on a field goal block and just put a hand up, check a box. Maybe across the league. What do you credit the player buy-in, especially of the starters, when it comes to special teams?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just has to do with pride. From a defensive side, you always want to pitch a shutout. So you want to make them pay for points is what we kind of talk about right there. And I learned this my time in San Francisco with John Lynch. Like, you're pissed off that you gave up a field goal or a touchdown, make them pay for points. Maybe you get, a point off the board right there. Last year it was a little bit of solace. We blocked one against Tampa Bay. It got us to a 2-score game. Like, regardless if it's field goal block, all the points matter in the NFL. You can see everything comes down to a field goal, a 1-score game. So for us, from a field goal standpoint, we know we can't sleep right there. It's a physically challenging job. But if you're able to make other teams pay for points and you're able to get points on the board, more often than not, when it comes down to those last seconds, you're going to be on the happier end than not.
Earlier, you mentioned that there's still a lot uncertain left on what kickers can do what. What's available right now in McLaughlin's repertoire, and how much more time do you spend like scouting out kickers on the schedule, and whether they can do dive balls, knuckleballs, or whatever? How much more work does that produce?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it produces more work. You're just, a lot more cognizant. You try to give the players, all the answers you possibly can to them before, game time right there. Obviously, case by case, Chase hasn't shown it, but that doesn't mean he can't do it. Similar to us, like there's still stuff that we haven't shown that possibly we can do when the weather starts to change right there. So you always try to prepare everything for anything that can happen. That goes to practice where I could throw in, say a guy only kicks the ball up in the air or he tries to pop it at the 10. I can control on Wednesday and Thursday. I could throw in a knuckleball in there or a squib just so it's never, leaving the mind of the returns that they can still do this and keep them prepared just in case they want to use that to their advantage right there against us on kickoff.
When they line up for that last one, what's your confidence level that you are going to get a block from one of those two guys? And at what point during the operation are you thinking, yeah, we got this?
Yeah, I have such faith in those guys in that field goal block team because they take so much pride in it. And for me, I kind of stand right there and about the first 3 steps, if I see some good penetration, maybe 2.5 yards, I'm like, all right, we got a real chance at it because, JD's 6'7", JC's a freak athlete. They get their hands up. So when I could see that kind of field goal pro kind of get pushed back a couple yards, I'm like, all right, we got an actual chance. And, JC and JD get all the credit, but BY and Morrow did a heck of a job against Havenstein in their end to push them back as well, to give JD that opportunity to get both hands up, block it right there. So it all goes hand in hand. And those 4 guys, they sit in that back right corner as I view it right now. And I know they're viewing it like, all right, we've got an opportunity to change the momentum of the game on a field goal block.
When you talk about fielding a kick like a shortstop, would you ever take it as far like to watch infielders to see how they square up?
Yeah, for myself, I guess for me, like Ron Washington was with the A's for so long. I know he's a heck of a fielding coach, third base coach right there. But in terms of just trying to take those aspects, and again, some of these guys never played baseball, so they may not even get that reference who Ron Washington is right here. But to allow them to, I could get them, a 10-yard walkthrough just to have them shuffle, get their feet in line where they can at least, if it does take a big hop, it hits your shoulders and it's going to fall straight down. I can now pick it up. Instead of when it's to the side, if it does take a skid right there, now we're really in a danger zone. So just trying to keep them as square as possible and keep their feet hot where they're able to field a bouncing ball.
As a follow-up to what you said about Terrence Braxton, the advanced scouts, you don't hear them discussed often. What value do they provide to you guys?
They provide a lot of value. They come in, Monday morning going into the next opponent. Hey, do you want to meet? And like whenever the time works for them, I'm ready to meet with them because they give you little tidbits from the game. Amina went out there to go scout them in Tampa Bay, and she gives us all the injuries, what happened. Practice squad guys, and Terrence does a deep dive onto their roster, and he gives us little tidbits on their personnel that you're watching the film, but there may be something else that you miss, in terms of all the film you watch. So I value all those guys because they do such a good job, and they're in here just as long as we are, trying to give us the best advantage for the next week and the next opponent.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Representing.
I got you. All right, guys.
What turned things around Sunday?
Sunday, it was a tale of two halves for sure. I think when we look back at the game, we were able to kind of make the adjustments we needed to get it going in the second half. And when you get in those moments, you do what you got to do to get it done. And I think that the guys were awesome at just taking into everything we needed to do and sequencing plays together and making plays and executing and getting it done.
I guess the first half was a little too conservative for your liking.
No, I wouldn't say like conservative is the word. I think, when those things happen, like we went 3 and out, obviously, a few times, you look at, okay, where was the drive starting? What was the breakdown on the play? What happened? How do we stop this? How do we get out of this? So I think when we look back on it, there's obviously things we can always learn from that. But you don't go into it saying like, hey, I got to be really conservative here. That's definitely not, something you want to do. I think it's just a matter of just going forward, just learning from those moments and how to get ourselves out of those situations.
Is there an inherent shift in your approach whenever you're down 3 scores?
I think by nature, if you look around the league, when you start to have those kind of games, you got to do things a little bit differently to get yourself back into it and steal extra possessions, which is what we did by doing it the way we did it. So, yes, I think there is a little bit.
Is the success circumstantial to that, or those things that can cross over to?
No, I think if you look around, like kind of what we've done, even throughout the years and even this past first 2 games prior to that, when we kind of push the pace a little bit at times within drives, it's been successful. Just the way we had to do it was a little bit different, the amount of volume for it.
Since the second half of the first game, you guys have seen the blitz at an extremely high rate. Why do you think that has been the case?
I think really, the first half of the season, always people have all off season obviously to game plan you, right? So they're looking for ways to stop you. We've played all these teams multiple times. They know us really, really well. And so they're just looking for stuff, right? They're wanting to try new things and see what they can do against us. So I think that's a little piece of it. And I think just by nature, if you look around the league, I think pressure's up a little bit in general. I watched a little bit of the game last night and listened to someone on the radio and I drove home. So like you can see and just hear what's happening around the league. I think that's a little bit of a trend and it'll probably continue.
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
real quick? Typically, you think blitz, okay, against the pass.
Yep.
But are they doing it also to flood the run lanes?
I mean, really, when you look at it as a whole, I think it's pretty much, it's every down now. Teams are doing something to create, something that they want to get done, whether it's one line of defense, whatever their identity is defensively. So, yeah, I think it's just happening more frequently in general. And like I said, if you look around the league, I think you see more of it.
What's your process for taking the information that your players bring back to you from the field and then implementing it into what you're doing?
Yeah, so that's a big part of it, right? So really, when you look at just the sideline discussions in general, we all try to, as coaches, look through the pictures first, kind of communicate, and then it goes position group by position group. I always talk to Jalen first. We go through what we're seeing, kind of what happened out there, kind of foreshadowing what we want to do. And then, I usually talk to the receivers and talk to Saquon in the backs and then work my way down and talk to the O-line. And so it's really important because they're the ones out there doing it, right? And so they give you really good information and feedback sometimes about what they're feeling, what's happening, how it's happening, and when it's happening. And ultimately, you want to put them in the best spot you can, right, for them to do their job.
There was a sequence on the sideline late in the third quarter where Jalen's like passionately talking to you and Jamal Singleton. What do you remember about that? The message he was trying to deliver?
Yeah, it's funny. Like it wasn't really anything about anything that was a heated moment. I think it was just a play that had happened, and I don't even remember, to be honest, what we were talking about. And I know that was kind of been made a big deal, but it wasn't anything, that was a serious matter of any kind. In fact, like Jalen and I have had really good discussions in general. If you watch those touchdown drives, and we've been driving the ball, like him and I get very excited in general, both excited people and very competitive. So I think it's been really, really good.
In the aftermath of the game, both Jalen and AJ
Yep.
talked about the one for the offense to be more aggressive. Jalen characterized it as playing not to lose. What have your conversations been like with them since the game about those desires to kind of make the offense a little bit more aggressive?
Yeah, I think that's always when we go into every week, that's what we want to do, right? We want to be the aggressive person, right? The word this past week for the offense, when I spoke to the offense, was attack. We want to be in attack mode. And going into the game, that was what we wanted to do. The first drive was a good drive. We went for on 4th down. We threw the ball down the red zone at the goal line. So we were in an attack mode. We got stuck in those weird situations where we just couldn't get it out of there and get it going. And then the second half, obviously, we had to play a little bit differently, but we were able to get it going. So I think, they know what we want to do, and I think it was just exciting for it to happen. and come back. When you get emotional after games, you get excited because we were able to do something that was very difficult to do, and all the plays and the guys played tremendous. The players themselves were awesome in those moments, and the conversations and getting that done was such a big moment. It was really cool for everybody.
Kevin, how important is it? How important is it to?
Sorry, go ahead.
How important is it to be able to run the offense like you did in the second half without falling down 19 points and having to do it?
So really, when you look at it, like even through the first 3 games, right, we've played 3 different ways, right? We've won 3 different ways. We've had to make adjustments 3 different ways. And that's a good thing for us as an offense because, to the earlier question, you don't know what you're getting nowadays, right? You show up, you think you're going to get a certain thing in the first half, and all of a sudden you look and you're like, well, that's not what we saw on tape at all. So we've got to adjust as coaches and players quickly. And so this game, right, was more of we were stuck in neutral, and then we had to adjust in a different way because of the points, and we were able to do that. So I think when you look at it, you're just trying to find ways to go into a game with, here's what we see, here's what we'd like to try to do, and then we got to adjust quickly if we need to, if things happen that were, unexpected.
Can you translate, how helpful is it? I saw a couple of times you went 3 by 1, got AJ involved. Can that translate from week to week, or is that more situational in the moment?
We always have that in. It just depends on what the defense does schematically. So really, you just try to look at it each week, what gives us the best chance, to identify coverage and help the quarterback out.
If I could follow up to the previous answer from Bruce's question, and I asked this philosophically, what makes you want to be reactive as opposed to proactive, right? But like in terms of seeing what defense is presenting you as opposed to getting them to react to what you're doing.
No, I think to answer your question, you always want to be out in front of it, right? You want to be the aggressor. What we did, on the first drive, we were doing stuff on purpose. We didn't really care what they were doing. We were going, and like I said, situationally a little bit with those backed up. The way the kickoff played out for us, we had some different things happen, and we were really one play away from just getting out in front of it, making one first down, staying at a 2nd and long and being perfectly on track. So we just got to continue to improve that, as a staff and work through that, with those moments when they come up in the game. But no, you always want to be the aggressor, obviously.
How much Fred had a lot of experience last year on both sides. I guess probably our perception was that he'd be the swing tackle and be the first guy in. Either offensive tackle went down. Why wasn't he?
Really, when it looked at it, just the way we had kind of practiced, Matt had played more right at that moment. And then when we made the switch, we just made the switch.
In terms of being proactive, how much did tempo allow you guys to keep them in base coverages so you knew what you were probably going to get?
Well, it can definitely help, right? It puts stress on the defense, and that's what you want to do when you're in those moments. And then it obviously can help the offense. But really, when you look at it, it's all about the communication of the offensive guys, right? Because I have to get the play into Jalen. He's got to get it to everybody and communicate it out. So in those kind of moments, you are going at tempo to put stress on the defense, but you're also doing it to make sure the communication is good and everybody knows what they're doing because you're reacting to what, the coverage that's going to happen in the moment.
So are you saying the communication, because you're going quicker,
yes.
It's not as, the phrasing is shorter, it's quicker, right? Is that what?
It can be very different. Without giving stuff away, it has to be different, right? Because you're going fast. There's no huddle per se, so you got to go.
Why does Saquon have so much trouble finding room to run in it? Are there things that maybe you can do different with him?
Yeah, I think when you look at the run game the last 3 weeks, we just got to continue to work through it as a staff to try to find ways to create more space for him in the run game and take advantage of what people are giving us.
Lane's value is as evident when he's not out there. I'm sure the Tampa film last year showed that too. What changes when Lane's not on the field?
I mean, Lane's a Hall of Fame player. Like, he's an unbelievable player. And he gives you the flexibility to do a lot of things that most offenses don't have. So when he's not out there, you definitely feel it.
What does the film show is happening with the run game?
I think when you look at the run game kind of as a whole, when we line up and kind of identify what we're trying to do, right, we're getting different things this year than we've gotten in the past, right? Saquon was such a big part of our offense last year. Everybody knows, hey, he's a huge part of the offense. So it's a matter of just kind of going in there and watching and seeing. I mean, we've had some good hits here and there. We've been really, really close on a few to having explosive runs. I mean, the touchdown that he had against Kansas City, if we were on the 50-yard line, it's a 50-yard touchdown. So, like, I think it's still there. It's just been a little bit different the way it's unfolded, and especially, obviously, the game the other day in the second half, we were in such a pass mode, it just kind of didn't happen.
When seeing some of those runs on 3rd and longs, what's the thought process there as opposed to not airing it out?
Well, it depends. Obviously, we talked about the backed up piece of it, right? You got to be a little situationally aware when you're backed up versus max protecting. Defensively, like a lot of teams like to drop 8, right? And if you're dropping 8, there's only 3 guys in the front. That means there's 8 guys in coverage. Well, it's a little bit differently, to try to fit passes in versus drop 8. So you're sometimes playing those situationally because you know what the defense does.
When I say a Todd Bowles defense, what do you think of first?
Todd's an awesome coach. I worked for him for 2 years in New York. Unbelievable coach, and he's done it for a really, really long time. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.